Hancock joining us from Preps Nation to break down Auburn football as the Tigers prepare for the number one team in college football, Georgia, coming to town. Auburn's most important game to date. Yes, they played Clemson, but that was out of conference. They've got the one loss against LSU in conference, but still with a chance to do something special this season. And speaking of which, Jamie, maybe Auburn has the most difficult closing stretch of any team in college football. That's not tough to argue. A date with Georgia, a date with Alabama, but at the same time, it provides opportunity. So I don't know if too many Auburn fans are talking about this. I'm sure that they are, that despite the two losses and most two-loss teams being knocked out of the college football playoff, because of what Auburn would need to do, yes, there are opportunities for losses to knock them down the rankings, but it's also an opportunity here with Georgia at home, with the Alabama game as well, and then a trip to the SEC championship game if they should get through the two best teams in the country, with another opportunity against the Bulldogs, that there's a possible college football playoff path. Now, we can get ahead of ourselves. Of course, Gus Malzahn, the coaching staff, and the players, they gotta look at Georgia on Saturday afternoon, and that's got to be the complete focus. But we can talk about it and speculate. Is that being talked about too much?
There's a little bit of talk about it, and it's warranted, especially because of how big these games are. The loss at Clemson was a good loss, even though if you watched it, Auburn played very poorly on offense. The loss to LSU, bad loss. But if you look at it, losing at Baton Rouge has never been something that is considered, that's just awful. So coming into this game, a two-loss team should not really have the opportunity in front of them, but they do. And it's simply because their closing schedule is so difficult. If you beat number one Georgia, you will then go and play the number one team the next week, which would be Alabama. If you happen to beat Alabama after beating number one Georgia, you would get Georgia again, who would most likely, if they take care of business against Georgia Tech, would be in the top five. If you can close out and beat those two teams three times, all of which would be in the top five, and you would be the SEC champion, Mark, I would find it very difficult with the failures in the Big Ten this year and the failures in the Pac-12. It would be very difficult to keep a two-loss Auburn team after what they accomplished at the end of the year out of that playoff. Now, if they were to be kept out, would it be a travesty? Absolutely not. Because of the failure at LSU, not the Clemson game, the failure at LSU. However, it would be very, very plausible, if not likely, if they close out and Georgia beats Georgia Tech and they close those two teams out, that they're in.
It's intriguing. It's not likely for anybody to be able to go through that gauntlet. Georgia twice and Alabama, of course, but it's an opportunity for a team that's had the disappointing loss at LSU, and of course the big matchup against Clemson wasn't able to get the job done. It's still an opportunity for a two-loss team, and the most challenging, but also the biggest opportunity for any two-loss team in the country. That wouldn't guarantee them, as you mentioned, it wouldn't be a travesty, but I don't know that anyone could throw out that late resume, anything close to what Auburn would be able to say that first week of December. All right, Jamie Hancock from Preps Nation breaking down Auburn, Georgia. Should be a fun one. You have any last words for us, Jamie?
As an Auburn fan, I would love to see Gus Malzahn and his staff somewhat let it all hang out. There is nothing to fear as far as how you coach this game. I don't believe that you can be conservative. I think that you have to give it your best opportunity and take the things and not coach afraid. That's easy for me to say. It's not my job. But I would love to see the staff, not hold anything back, as Dan Deerdorf said in The Water Boy, and go after the game. Georgia's a team that beat you last year without scoring an offensive touchdown. That's embarrassing. And I believe that's something that this team has held on to. I believe that's going to be Auburn's rallying cry for this game is last year's game and the embarrassment of being beat without giving up an offensive touchdown. And I expect this team to come out and play spirited. If they do not, it will not go well, because one thing about Georgia, they play with a lot of spirit and a lot of confidence, and Auburn needs to do the same.
All right, Jamie, we appreciate the time. You take care.
Thank you, Mark. It's great every time I get to join you.